Hi, I'm Dave from Doyle Vacuum Systems, and I want to thank you for purchasing the Garage Air-N-Vac Station. Today we're going to do a short video talking about how to unpackage and install the unit. So when your system arrives, it's going to come in two boxes. This larger box on my right actually houses the vacuum unit that also encompasses the air compressor. We're going to leave that alone for now, and we're going to focus on this box here, which holds all of the mounting hardware and components needed in the first step of the process. So this is basically a compilation of all the tools you're going to need to do this installation. You may use all of them, you may only use some of them, but you're going to want to have some sort of a level. You're going to want to have a few different wrenches. In this case, we have 7/16, ½ inch, 9/16, and 3/4, as well as an adjustable wrench. You're going to want a utility knife. You're going to want some sort of a side cutter or a snipper to be able to cut through a wire tie or two. And then you're going to want to have obviously a tape measure, a pencil, and a cordless drill. All right, so now we've opened up this box, and the first thing we're going to want to do is just unpack a lot of the components that are in here and set those aside for later use. So we're going to take off this top foam liner, and then we're going to take out the air hose. We're going to uncoil or take out the whole vacuum hose that's going to go with this, and we're just going to take this and set it aside. So inside of this storage unit, we have a couple of drawers that are also going to have pieces and parts in there. We're going to go ahead and pull those out, set this aside as well. And inside here, we're going to have a bag that has all of your mounting hardware. It's got some Teflon tape. It's got some pneumatic connectors and that sort of thing that we're going to use during the installation process. So this is one of the first things we're going to need. Now we're going to start unpacking some of the actual components of the assembly. We have two mounting rails. There is an upper rail and there is a lower rail, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Here's one of your mounting panels. We're going to set that to the side. And there's another mounting panel, and we'll set that to the side as well. And that is the contents of that box. Okay, so the first two parts we're going to work with, or the first part we're going to work with, is the upper mounting rail and then the lower mounting rail, okay? They look very much alike, but there is a slight difference, and you can see it here on the left side, where there's an insert about 1 inch in from the edge on the upper rail, and on the lower rail, it's only about 1/2 inch in. So it's very important to keep those separate and make sure that we go with the upper one and the lower one. All right, so I've unpacked the bag of hardware that we talked about in the unpacking portion of this video, and I'm just going to show you what the contents of this are. There's going to be a band clamp, there's going to be some pneumatic fittings, and there's going to be a spool of Teflon tape. You're also going to have a small little Torx bit drive for use in the installation process, screws for mounting the rails to the wall. We've got an extra set of a wing nut, a washer, and a little rod cap for the filter assembly, and that's just a spare so that in case you lose one along the way, you'll have a backup. We've got all the mounting bolts that we're going to use. We've got washers that go with that. We've got some fender washers. We've got a couple other rubber washers, a couple of nuts, and then we've got 2 short studs that we use only during the installation process to help support the vacuum unit during installation. So the first step in the process is going to be marking the location for the top rail. That's the first thing we're going to install, and it really drives the rest of the installation from there. So the first thing we want to do is identify the locations of our studs in the walls. The rails are pre-drilled for both a 16-inch on center and 24-inch on center stud distance. In this case, we have a 16-inch on center, so that's the installation we're going to be doing today. So we're going to mark our stud locations, and then we also have identified that we want to mount this unit 72 inches up off the ground. So we want to mark a line 72 inches off the ground at 2 different locations along the wall so that we can have a nice level installation. So the first thing you're going to want to do is use the Torx bit we provided you in your cordless drill and take the upper rail and go to the center hole, and let's tighten that right into the stud. Then we'll go over here to the side and do that one. And we'll come right back over here. So we have 3 screws that are going to go across the top of the rail, and we're going to have 3 screws that are going to go across the bottom of the rail as well. All right, so now your top rail is installed, and from here we're going to use all the different parts as we slowly put them together so that we don't have to mark the position of the bottom rail. That will just fall into place when we're all said and done. So after we have the top rail mounted, the next thing is going to be to put on the two main mounting panels. And there are two separate panels. There is a left side panel and a right side panel. We're going to start with the left side panel, which has these four stud locations, or these four insert locations, kind of arranged in a diamond pattern. That's going to be at the top and in the left side. And what we're going to do is put that up, and we're going to take one of the bolts and a washer, and we're just going to loosely tighten that in, finger tighten it in, just get it started, okay? And we're going to do that for all three locations. Okay, so now we're going to hang the right-hand side panel, and this is the orientation we want it in. There are four big stud locations, or four insert locations that are spread out, and these two little ones up here at the top, that's going to be in the top left. And again, we're just going to go ahead and finger tighten these in place. So now we just take the bottom rail and we insert it behind the bottom of the panels. And we're just going to, again, finger tighten in into the inserts. So now we're ready to go ahead and secure the lower mounting rail to the wall. What you may need is some sort of an extender to be able to reach into these pockets and put the screws in the upper part of the rail, or you might have to go and remove the panels temporarily to be able to do that. But we're just going to go ahead and secure the lower ones at this point in time, and then we'll come back and do the upper ones. All right, so now we have both the panels on the wall, and we have the lower rail fully attached to the wall. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to attach the tool bin. Now, in order to attach the tool bin, what we're going to want to do is remove the two bolts from the lower left-hand corner here and here from the panel, because these lower two bolts are actually going to be also used to secure the tool bin to the wall. I'm just going to grab a couple of nuts here, and we're going to lift it up into position, and again, just kind of finger tighten those into place. So there's four on the inside, and then there's two more down here at the bottom. Okay, so now we have these things all just finger tightened in. We can go ahead now and tighten all of these bolts up. Okay, so now we have the tool bin fully secured to the mounting panel. The next thing we're going to do is mount the hose hanger for the vacuum hose. And we're going to use one of our 1/4 inch bolts along with the larger diameter fender washers for this portion of the process. You're just going to go ahead and position it here. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to hang our wand hanger bracket, and that's going to go on these two holes up here. And again, we're going to use the 1/4 inch bolt with the smaller washers. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get ready to mount the actual vacuum and compressor unit, and that's what these two short little threaded rods are for. Okay, this is to give us a little bit of assistance, but let me first say that this is most definitely a two-person job. You're going to want to have a friend over or have somebody else to give you a little bit of a hand, because this unit is relatively heavy. It weighs about 60 pounds, and putting it on the wall and getting the holes lined up can be a bit of a challenge. But in order to help facilitate that, what we're going to do is take these short threaded rods, and we're just going to thread them into the two lower inserts. Now that way, when we do bring the vacuum unit over, we can actually stick that over the ends of those rods, and we can get our top two bolts in place, and then we'll remove these and put the lower two bolts in place before we tighten everything up. All right, so now we need to unbox the actual vacuum and compressor unit, and again, that's in this box. So let's just take our utility knife and go ahead and open that up. Going to remove this top piece, and then we're going to come down here to the one end, and we're going to pull out this end piece of foam as well, okay? And then we're ready to lift the vacuum unit right out of the box. All right, so now we have the vacuum unit, and again, it's not overly heavy, but it is about 60 pounds. So definitely having a person to help you with it is going to be a great thing. So I'm going to ask Steve here to come on in. He's the homeowner, and he's going to help me lift this into place. There, and now if you'll just hold it up against there. Okay, so now we have those in, so we're going to go ahead and remove these two lower studs, and we can discard those, and then we need to get the last two bolts. And we're gonna go ahead and get those finger tightened in. Okay, so let's go ahead and tighten those up. Okay, it's fully installed now. So now we're gonna just start attaching different components. Okay, so now is probably a good time before we start attaching anything to go ahead and cut. There's a zip tie holding the power cord in place. So let's go ahead and cut that so we can uncoil the power cord. Let's go ahead and get the side mounting bracket for the air hose installed. Now in order to do that, the first thing we're gonna need to do is actually pull the filter out of the machine. Okay, so let's just set that aside. There's a rod cap on the end of the threaded rod that holds the filter in. You're going to want to make sure you keep that. Then there's a small wing nut that you want to unscrew, and then a small rubber washer just above that. You want to make sure that you retain all these pieces. And then you just reach up inside and pull the filter out. This is the filter. We're going to talk about that a little later on. Now we have a couple of carriage bolts, some rubber washers, and a couple of bolts that we're going to use or a couple of nuts we're going to use to attach the hose hanger to the side of the machine. Going to go ahead and put the carriage bolt through the hose hanger. Then we're going to put the rubber washers on. That'll help kind of hold those in place. Take your two nuts, insert through the holes on the side of the machine here, and just go ahead and we'll finger tighten those up inside real quick. And then again, we'll come back with our wrench and tighten those up. So now that hose hanger is firmly in place. And for now, we're going to go ahead and put the filter back in. Okay, just going to reach that up inside. Probably the biggest challenge is always to get the threaded rod lined up with the hole that's in the end of the filter. Put the rubber washer on. Put on the wing nut. Tighten it to just snug, doesn't have to be overly tight, and then put the rod cap back on the end. Okay, so now let's attach the air hose. So in order to put the air hose in, we're going to want to definitely get one end of the air hose out of the coil. Maybe go ahead and cut one of these bands that holds it in place so we have a little bit of slack to work with here. Don't necessarily have to uncoil the whole thing. We'll set those aside. And this is where you're going to start using your Teflon tape. You just want to run some Teflon tape around the end of the fitting. And then the end of the air hose is going to screw right into the bottom of this T connector right down here. So just kind of get that started. And then go ahead with your wrench. And again, you don't have to make it crazy tight, but make that a nice snug connection, all right? Now your air hose is connected, so the next thing we can do is cut the rest of these bands on the air hose, and we'll probably just uncoil it and then hang it up on the hanger. Now we're going to attach the quick connect fitting to the other end of the hose so that you can make attachment and detachment of the different accessories much simpler. So again, we're going to start by putting Teflon tape on the end of the fitting. One wrench to hold the fitting or the end of the hose, and the other one just to tighten this thing on. All right, again, it doesn't have to be ridiculously tight, but enough to make sure that it doesn't leak air. Now we have the air hose all set up. Let's go ahead and attach the vacuum bucket. All right, so here's the vacuum bucket. This is where your dirt's gonna collect inside the machine as far as the heavy dirt. So we're gonna go ahead and attach this to the bottom of the machine. There's two latches on each side. The easiest thing to do is go ahead and hook one end of the bucket into one side and then reach across and get the other end. Position the bucket inside and go ahead and tighten it up. So now let's go ahead and attach the vacuum hose. So now inside of all the items that are included with the package, one of the things you're going to find is one of these gray cuffs. It's threaded on one end and it's smooth on the other end, okay? What we're going to do is go ahead and thread that on one end of the hose, and you can just tighten that down, make it relatively snug. And then we have a band clamp that's it's just a thumb tightening thing. And we're going to go ahead and put that over the end of the cuff and then slide the cuff over the vacuum intake, and we'll just go ahead and finger tighten that on. And now your vacuum hose is attached. Now when you move that vacuum hose from the vacuum intake to the blower discharge port, you're going to loosen up that band clamp and slide it up, slide it off. Over time, this cuff will get a little looser, and that's why the band clamp is there, just to make sure that it can stay on and it won't fall off during operation. Okay, so let's go ahead and now just coil up the vacuum hose. Okay. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and assemble the vacuum wand and the floor brush to it. It's a two-piece vacuum wand. All we're going to do is basically put it together. It's a reverse S, or it's an S shape. It doesn't go like this. It goes like this. Okay, just push the button in, and that is now in place. And then to put the tool in, we just loosen the collar on the front end of the tool, slide the brush in, and then tighten that collar up. And that gives us a tool that pivots real well, but doesn't come out, okay? And then to hang that, we're just gonna go ahead and hang that on the wall right there. So now let's just start to assemble all the hand tools and everything that come with the unit. First of all, we have an upholstery tool or a duck foot tool, kind of shaped like a duck's foot. That's for vacuuming on flat surfaces. You're gonna wanna put a cuff on here. So we put the cuff on. These are pretty tight, so we give you a cuff for every tool and just push down real solid to get that embedded in there. Now we have a crevice tool. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna push it down in. There's a bin and duster tool. That pushes in a little easier, doesn't have the big teeth to bite into there. We have a blower nozzle. That's going to go into a cuff and get pushed in nice and snug. And then we have our air knife tool. Now that's going to get another gray cuff because this is a 2-inch connection here, and we're going to an 1.5 inch diameter hose. So we're going to go ahead and put that in, and again, push that down. So now all those tools are ready to go into the machine. This cuff goes on the wand, and you can just slide it on there. What you'll find is when you go to hook up the wand, it's easier just to pull the cuff right off, go ahead and screw this onto the end of the hose, and then go ahead and put the wand back on. And that's the same thing for changing all the tools, is just go ahead and unscrew each tool and reattach the new tool with the cuff that's provided for that tool. Okay, let's set those aside. The next thing is we have these little inflator tips and a cuff that those will mount into. Okay, these come all joined together. What you're going to want to do is snip these apart and then use a utility knife to kind of trim the edge so it's nice and round so that they'll actually fit into the end of the cuff. And then you can choose the right inflator tip for whatever you're inflating. Go ahead and insert that into the end of the cuff and use it to do your inflation as necessary. I'm not going to do that right now. And then the next thing we have is our tire inflator gauge assembly. So that's what's in this little box right here. And this is the air whip end of it. This just goes ahead and threads inside the end of the tool. Next thing included is we have this little blow-off gun. We'll just take that out of the package. That's one of your pneumatic tools. And then we have a little 7-piece attachment kit here. And that's where these little red tubs come in handy, okay? Let's just take all the needles for ball inflation, the blower tips, and everything, and just go ahead and throw those in one of the bins, okay? Included with the machine, we have 3 quick connect male connectors, okay? And these all need to have Teflon tape attached. All right, so getting back to the setup and everything, we've gone ahead and attached all the quick connects to the ends of the blower tools and that sort of thing. And we have 2 red bins that come with the unit. One that's kind of primarily established or there to hold all of your different air tools. So we're gonna go ahead and put the blow gun and the blow off gun and the tire inflator all in that bin. And then on the other side, it's more for things associated with the actual vacuum blower side of things. So here I have my cuff with one of the tips inserted now, and my other 2 tips. Go ahead and throw those in there, and then the main blower tip there as well. I'm also going to go ahead and take, like I said earlier, we're going to supply a spare wing nut, rod cap, and washer for the filter assembly. The rod cap is important because over time, if we don't have that in place, the threads on the rod will tend to get gunked up with debris, and then it makes it difficult to unscrew. So always make sure you have your rod cap in place. If you lose both of them, please call us and we can send you replacements. All right, so now we've got our tool bins loaded up with the tools, and they just are going to insert into the bottom of the tool bin holder there, and that's where those items are stored. And then we have our different vacuum attachments here, and those are going to go ahead and insert in to the top of the tool bin. That's rather large, obviously makes room for any future accessories you might want to add that aren't something that we include with the unit. So now we have the unit completely ready. All the parts and components are here. All we need to do is plug it in. Okay, so we can go to a standard wall outlet, 15 amp, go ahead and plug that in, and we're ready to go. So now to operate the unit, there's a three-way switch. The center position is off. Up is the vacuum or the blower function, and down is the air compressor, okay? Let's go ahead and attach the blower nozzle to the quick connect. You just pull back and insert it, let it slide forward, and now you have your blower tip on there. And let's go ahead and put our duck foot or our upholstery tool on the end of the hose. And we go ahead and just thread that on until it's snug. It does have a swivel cuff on it, so it makes it easy to manipulate on the other end. And let's just see how everything works, okay? So we'll turn on the vacuum. It's working great, nice and strong. Okay? So now we have that. That's functional and operational. The next thing you want to look at is that we do have an adjustable pressure relief valve on the discharge side of the air compressor. And that's right here. It's just a gradient scale, so we can screw this black knob or unscrew the black knob, but it goes up to 100 psi. The compressor is rated for continuous operation at 100 psi, and really not much need for much more pressure than that in any type of a garage or standard application. But we typically like to screw it in and maybe set it at about 70 or 80 as a good working pressure, okay? But let's go ahead and turn on the compressor. The hose is going to fill with air, and you'll hear it starts relief. It's relieving now, okay? We can actually back the pressure off a little bit, okay? And then to activate the blowgun, you're going to get momentary blasts of air for doing things like blowing off and that sort of thing. It's going to be a momentary impulse of air, but there's enough pressure there, enough airflow and everything there to drive something like a pneumatic nail gun, obviously to inflate your tires, do things like that, and then to use your blowgun in order to do things like blow out the vents in your car or anything that's a tight crevice where you want to blow dust, that sort of thing. This is a great tool for that. Obviously you have your other blower tip for other applications, whether inflating footballs or basketballs or whatever it may be, maybe helping to inflate pool toys or that sort of thing. But that's the other thing that we can do with the blower output on the actual vacuum side, is we can do high volume, fast inflation of things like a pool toy or an inflatable mattress or that sort of thing. Okay, one last thing. Obviously, we give you a fairly long cord. I think it's about a 10-foot cord coming out of the machine. In this case, the receptacle location is right here, so we don't have to go very far. So let's go ahead and take and clean up some of that excess length, okay, so that it's not all over the place. We're just going to go ahead and bundle up some of the cable, take some wire ties, or some zip ties rather. So once we have that zip tied, we can just go ahead and cut off the stray ends. And that just kind of cleans it up and makes it look a little neater back here. So that completes the whole installation process. We have all the tools where they're supposed to be stored. We have all of our hoses hung. We have the hoses attached. We have all the tool hangers in place. We have the tools stored where they belong, and the machine's plugged in and ready to go. So now you're ready for years and years of great service.